Good morning and welcome to Blackberry Ridge. I went out into the garden and I found some beautiful cabbages that there's no way that Ambria and I are going to be able to eat at this point. So I've decided that I was going to can them. This is the way that I can. I don't know if it's the federally recommended way of doing the canning of cabbage, but this is just the way that we do it here, and it has worked for me for a long time. So the first thing that we need to do is we're going to pull out those big ugly outer leaves, and those immediately went to the livestock. My cow, of course, poor honeysuckle, she's over with her boyfriend right now, so she didn't get any, but the goats and thistle really love those outside leaves. And then the ones that was the next layer of leaves, I went ahead and I pulled off. And I think what I'm going to do tonight or tomorrow is I'm going to take these beautiful leaves and I think I'm going to make some stuffed cabbage leaves with these. So let's put these to the side. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to prepare our cabbage. So you need a good knife and this is the core. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir to a lot of you, but some of the people that are watching this are brand new gardeners, brand new chef, cookers, canners, whatever name you want to call yourself. So they're just learning. So let's all be patient with each other and learn together. And if you know it, just shake your head. Yes. And shake your head, yes. And if you don't know it, then go, oh, okay. So this is the core, and the core is where it was attached in the ground. This is where the root came out, and I went and I cut it off right here where the root was, and then that's when I pulled off all those outside leaves. And the root also went to my livestock. So what we need to do though is we need to get rid of this, and this actually goes all the way up and through the cabbage, and it has this hard white center to it that is called the core. So the way that I do it is I put the core towards my belly, and then I take my good sharp knife and I'm going to go in about a third of the way onto the cabbage, and at an angle with a rocking motion, because this is pretty tough to cut. Why go to the gym when you're a gardener? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to cut that aside. Okay. And this is what the core looks like right there. So I want to go ahead and get rid of that little piece of the core. Just cut it out, and I will throw it to the animals later. Okay, we're going to let that lay aside. Now that gives us a flat area here that we can lay down on our cutting mat. And so there again, I'm going to cut at an angle because the core is going to be going in through here, so I'm going to cut at an angle around that. And cut another piece. Doing the same thing, cutting at an angle. And there's the core removed. Okay? So, in our setup here, I have boiling water here, and I already have some of our cabbage because I had two heads. So I already have one of the heads in here. And on this one here, I have a large pot, and I have our jars. We're going to do quart jars today, and I have our jars in this one right here. And we're not going to do water bath canning, though, people. No, no, no. We're going to have to pressure can this because it's a low acid food. So I'm just using this pot here to get my jars where I use hot jars, hot lids, hot rings. That's the way I've always done it. There's some people who say you don't have to do it this way, but this is the way I've always done it, and it works. So this is the setup I've got on the stove right now. I wish that I had a setup where I could go ahead and have my pressure canner set back in this area right here. But since the burner that I have in this stove is a long central one, I'm not able to do that. There's not a burner that's there. So, okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our cut up pieces of cabbage, and I'm just going to pull them apart into sections. And we're going to put them over here in the boiling water. Just like that. And the reason I do that is because we're going to be putting these in jars and we need the pieces to be smaller. Make sure we get all the goodness in this pot. Turn the fire. Put the fire up on this. I had the fire real low. Okay. Oh, this is going to be so good this winter. So what we do with this is, first of all, we can put it in soups. We can just make cabbage with potatoes, but what we really, really, really like is that we'll take kielbasa or sausages, and we will have that for a meal. And oh, it is so good to have cabbage with potatoes and kielbasa. Sort of like almost like a soup. The way that I make it is I take the cabbage, and then I will add either chicken stock, the chicken stock dehydrated powder, or bouillon, whatever I happen to have at my hand at that time. The chicken flavored bouillon is what we use the most, sometimes the beef. And then take your potatoes and put them in. And let those boil until the potatoes get soft. And put your kielbasa in there, and some of the juices from the kielbasa is also going to get in there. Add some salt, pepper, garlic. And just let it cook until the potatoes soften. And you have got some good eating. Oops. Okay, I'm going to finish getting this in the pot, and what we're going to do is I'm going to let this blanch for 3 minutes. Blanch just means the water's going to come to a boil, and the vegetable or the product you've got in there that needs to be blanched is going to sit in that boiling water for that amount of time. That's called blanching. What that does is that it begins to cook the food just slightly, but the most important thing is that there are enzymes that are in these fresh vegetables that will continue to have them ripen. And that's why they ripen to the point that they rot. And that's what the vegetable is wanting to do. It's wanting itself to rot so that it can propagate and go into have another cycle of life. You know, going to seed or making itself so that it can renew itself. We don't want it to do that though. So if I blanch this for 3 minutes, and it's going to stop that enzyme. But more importantly, all of these vegetables that we have air in them. So if I continue to, if I go and I don't let these things get hot and blanch, then because of the air that's in them, they're going to float. And I'm sure you all have seen people's vegetables in their jars that have been floating. And that's because they do what's called cold pack or raw pack. And that's okay if that's what they like. But for me, what I have seen when I have raw packed is the vegetables that are on the top get kind of dried out and brown, and you know, and what I'm canning is goodness. I'm canning love, as Susan says from I'm still working. She says I'm jarring love, and so I want to have my food be as good as possible. And so I have chosen personally, I can't speak for other people, but I have chosen personally to go and add this little extra step to it so that I don't have that old brown, harder, wasn't sitting in the juice because it floated vegetable. And I'd be the one that end up with that on my plate because I wouldn't want to serve that to my daughter or to my guests. All right, so we're going to bring this to a boil, let it boil for 3 minutes, let it blanch for 3 minutes, and then we're going to take it out and we're going to put it in the jars. We'll be back. Okay, welcome back. We've got our cabbage over here, and it has been boiling for 3 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the fire off on it. And we got our jars over here, and they have been boiled and they're hot. We have our setup here where we're getting everything ready for canning. Something that I don't know if y'all have noticed, of course this is going to be written backwards and I don't know how to flip it. I'm not smart enough to figure out how to flip this electronic stuff. But in some lids some jars that I recently purchased, in the lid part it had new and improved sure tight lids. Helps keep canned food now up to 18 months. And I went, huh, new and improved, okay. I want my canned goods to last more than 18 months. As a matter of fact, I have some jars on my shelf that I've had for 5 months or 5 years, and they're still perfectly good. I mean, I have chicken that I've had there for five years that are still absolutely perfectly good. I'm just going to have to keep an eye on when I use these jar lids to see what happens, see how good they are. I mean, for instance, like this year, I didn't can any green beans. I didn't put any green beans out in the garden because I canned enough last year to tide us through for 2 years. Because I knew that I was going to be changing everything in the garden this year and I was going to be going to a different setup. And so I did all my green beans and everything that I would be needing last year. So my green beans needed to have lasted at least 24 months. And some of them are probably going to last even longer than that. Hopefully I have enough to last us even longer than that. So we'll just keep an eye on this. I don't know if any of you have seen this or have comments on it. If you do, leave comments down below. Let me know what you think about that or what you've heard, because I would appreciate it. Y'all are a smart group. Okay, so we're talking about canning lids. There are 2 different sizes of jars we're going to be using. One of them is called wide mouth, and one of them is called regular. And I didn't have enough of the wide mouth jars that were empty today to be able to do all wide mouth. This happens to be, as you can see, a ball lid. And these lids right here, the ones that are the gold coloring, I actually get from Lehman's. And they come in a long sleeve that's probably, you can't see what I'm measuring here, but probably 36 inches long. And I get a lot of them. I order my lids from them in the fall because generally, can't speak for them, but generally they put their lids on sale in the fall. And they're big long sleeves, and there's, you know, well over 300 lids in each of those sleeves. And I just love them. First of all, it gives me a lot of space to write what I need on the lid. As you can see from this ball lid, even though it's a wide mouth, about half, get the glare off of it, about half of this lid is advertisements about their product. And I want to write on there about my product. So anyway, so we've got this pan here where we've got our rings and we've got our lids. We've got salt, we've got our jar lifter, and all the other ends, ifs, and buts that we need for our canning. Now, the jars are in a water bath canner only, remember, only to get them to where they got hot and sterilized. It was a pot that was big enough to put all my jars in there. We're going to be switching these over to a pressure canner, and we're going to can these at 10 pounds pressure for 55 minutes. So this product does need to be pressure canned. So if you think you can water bath can it, you can try it, but I don't recommend it. I mean, this is the way I have always done it for years. Okay, so I'm going to get a hot pad here. Let's get to work, girls. Okay, so we got our hot jars here. Get this over in the sink. And we've got our hot cabbage here. Okay. Okay. We're going to start with a wide mouth. This one. We'll pour part of the water off. Remember that when you're pouring the water, to pour it through the wide slot, not the slot that has the handle on it. Okay, so I'm going to take part of this, and then I'm going to take part of this water, and I'm going to pour it over our lids and rings. I'll take a second jar out just because I want the water, and pour that over our lids and rings also. And I'll take this jar and put it over on this towel. Okay. So, I'm going to start by putting a half a teaspoon of salt in the bottom. As you can see from our cabbage, it has gotten lighter in color. Of course, I've got to feed the floor. Okay, just remember, people, we have got clean hands, we've got clean countertops, we've got our hair pulled back. If you've got long hair, get it pulled back, get it out of the way. You're going to have your apron on, and that, just in case you get splashed or something, that gives you an extra layer of protection between you and your clothes. Okay, we're not going to pack this down into the jar. We want this to be a little bit loose in the jar. Okay. So I'm going to fill it to right about there, to about, gosh, what would that be? I guess about 2 inches from the top. I'm going to fill it. Then I'm going to take the water that's in here. It's got all kinds of great vitamins and minerals in it, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill this up to 1 inch, between 1 inch and a half an inch from the top. Now, I'm going to take my wooden spoon. I don't know if you can see all the bubbles that are coming up out of that, but you want to really debubble that. The other thing that you can use as a debubbler, they have these gizmos, and I use these a lot. You can take that and put in there, but make sure that you really wiggle this in and around. I have just found that for me, when I'm doing the cabbage, the handle of a stout, sturdy wooden spoon works really well. And like I said, I'm really working this, people. Okay, I'm going to put in just a little bit more, because you can see this, I don't know if you can see, but the line of the fluid's down to here. So I'm going to fill this up with a little bit more fluid out of the pot, which is just water. That's the cabbage water. Okay, now we're going to take and I didn't get my cloth. I normally use a cloth for this, but I just went and got a paper towel, because that was fastest for us to do right now. And wipe the top really well. And then we're going to take our little stick here, and you can get a lot of these things in a set where it's the little stick with the magnet on it, which is the lid lifter and the jar lifter and the debubbler all in a set here. They're not very expensive. And I'm going to dig out of our lids, one of the wide mouth ones, and they're nice and hot. And one of our wide mouth rings, which is nice and hot. So like I say, when I can with hot jars, hot lids, hot rings. And then you're going to need a towel, because this is really hot. And you just want this to be finger tight. Sometimes people will get jars where they've kind of buckled on the edge there. And the reason that they've buckled is because they got the jars too tight. Got the lid on it too tight. And I put this up into my hand in the towel, and I'm holding on to it with my hand. I'm going to double check and make sure that it's the right tightness, which it is. Make sure that it's secure on the jar lifter before I go moving it. And I'm just going to park this in the water bath canner for right now, just to keep it hot. That's the only reason I'm putting it back in the water bath canner. Okay, friends, we'll be back when I get all of these jars filled. Okay, I've gotten all the jars filled, and we've put them into the water bath canner that has had the hot water in it to keep them hot. And so I'm going to take my jar lifter, and one at a time I'm going to lift them out, and I'm going to put them into the pressure canner. Just to let you know that this pressure canner is an All-American. It is model 921. I can put 7 quarts in it, or I can put, I think it's 17 pints. It has 2 layers that I can put it in because of the height of it. It actually came with 2 of these. I don't know exactly what they're called. One of these goes in the bottom to keep your jars up off the bottom of the pot. And then what you would do if you were doing pints is put a layer of pints in, then put this on top of the pints, and then put another layer on top of this. So carefully now I'm taking my jars. Aren't they just beautiful? Taking them and I am putting them into the pressure canner. There's a smidgen, just a little smidgen of water in here right now. Just because I didn't want the pot, because I got the fire on, and sometimes I have to light my stove with a match, so I didn't want to take the chance of having to pick up this pot with all these pints of quarts of cabbage in there and try to move them to light the fire. So I have gone ahead and got a little bit of water in there and got the fire underneath it, getting it hot. So I got 6 quarts out of those 2 heads of cabbage. Just let you see how pretty they are. Isn't that just beautiful? So 6 quarts. Now as you see, they turned a little bit white. And that's what they're supposed to do. The chlorophyll kind of gets cooked out of it, just like when you're cooking the cabbage. Now, those of you who know anything about me know that I am a definite frugal fan. So I am going to take the hot water, ladle some of this hot water, because I've paid money to heat this water with the propane. And it would be the same thing if it was on my wood stove, because there again I would have had the wood and the time and the effort of cutting the wood. And I'm going to fill this pot up with water till I get to what the manufacturer says I'm supposed to have with water. You look at the instructions for your pot. That's why I'm not giving you the definite amount on this, because I don't want you to say, well, Vivian Ann said I could put, so much XYZ amount of inches into my pressure cooker and it would work, and then it didn't work because you have a different pressure cooker. And what I just did is that I have a mark on my debubbler that I use for my pressure cooker that I have put on there, that I have scratched in there. and we are good. Okay, so this pressure cooker comes with a gauge right here. And this gauge has the different poundage that goes around it. Of course, I know this is going to be backwards for y'all. And then it locks in. It has these little groovies, these little things right here that locks in. Then you take the nuts on the side here, and I go opposites. And lock this down with these nuts. Now once a year I take and I put, because this is a metal seal, doesn't have a gasket, I take and put some Vaseline on it between the two metal pieces. And I do that at the beginning of the season. And I've just got these where they're, you know, finger tight. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up to where steam starts coming out of this nozzle right here. And I want the steam to be a heavy steam to come out of it. And it's going to come out for, I'm going to time it for 10 minutes after I get a good heavy steam. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to put my weight on. This is called a weight that comes with this model. And it has different numbers on it, 5, 10, and 15. And for my altitude, I use 10 pounds pressure. Sometimes I let it jiggle a little bit up to 11 or 12. Just because, you know, I am kind of on the side of this mountain. But it's not like I'm in the Rocky Mountains where I need 15-pound pressure. So I know you people in the Rocky Mountains say we don't have mountains here. And that's okay. So 10 pounds pressure. I will go, and this will go on here. And then I will start looking at this dial, and the dial will come up to 10 pounds pressure, and then this thing will start jiggling. It'll have steam coming out from it, and it'll start jiggling a little bit. And that's when I start timing this. And I'm going to time this for 55 minutes. Sounds like a long time, but 55 minutes. And then I will let it naturally have the steam come down. It's going to take a little while for the steam to come down. That's why I generally have 2 canners, like when I'm doing a lot of canning. That way I can have one working and cooling down while the other one is maybe being filled or working. So, so this is going to come down in pressure. When it comes down to where the nozzle says 0 on it, then I will take and I will hit this. Just tap it to make sure that there's no steam coming out of it really hard. And then with standing away from it, I will take a towel or a towel or something, and I will pull it off with that. Because it's going to be hot. And then let the little bit of steam that's left in there come off. Then I will go and release my nuts, opposites of each other, and slowly remove the lid, removing it away from my face, putting the lid where the lid is coming up towards my face, and the steam is going away from my face. And then I will let the jars sit for another couple of minutes, just where they can get themselves accustomed to not having the heat and the pressure on them. And I will use the jar lifter, and I will lift them, and I will put them on a tea towel that has been laid across the counter, and I will not touch them for 24 hours. Then after 24 hours, I remove the lids. And people, if you don't remember anything else that I tell you, you make sure that you remove these rings off of your jars. It's really important that you remove these rings, because you can have these rings on there and think that your food is okay, and the lid hasn't sealed. And then what you do is that you're going to have a jar of bad food sitting on your counter. Even though it looks like it's popped and the lid is indented and everything. This has happened. Believe me, it's happened to me. And when that happened, I started removing my rings off of the jars. And this has been years ago. So, like I said, if you don't remember anything that I say to you, don't keep these on. So I'm going to remove the rings, and then I will wash the jars just in case there's anything on them. And I don't want to put anything on and then go back later and, find out that there's yuck somewhere on the jar and it's rotted or stuck or, believe me, that's happened too. Not with cabbage, but with things like, maybe peaches or something like that where a little bit of juice or syrup has gotten on the jar. So I will wash the jars, and then I would write on them cabbage, and then I'll put the date on it, which is, I think, August the 25th. That's all there is to canning cabbage the Mamaw Thimble way. So, the Mamaw Vivian way, however you want to say it. God bless America. Pray for our country. And happy canning. It's Vivian Ann on the side of the mountain saying God bless.